Hi and welcome back to ScottiesTech.Info. I'm Scotty with my co-host Cletus. So a lot of people are asking me, how do I stay safe on the internet? A bunch of people have said, should I just use a VPN? Is antivirus, anti-malware software enough? Do I need like a hardware firewall, like a custom router? What's the secret to staying safe on the internet? So I thought I would cover a few little tips and tricks and then actually tell you what the real secret is to staying safe on the internet. So the first thing you want to think about is updates. Now, yeah, I know, yes, you should update Windows 10. I know this idea does not thrill you because in recent times, of course, Windows 10 updates have pretty much broken everything. You can't print, USB sticks don't work, half your computer stops working, it cracks in half, and half of it falls on the floor, whatever. But the simple fact of the matter is that software is made by flawed humans, and as such, software is very often flawed and has many security holes in it. So yes, you need to update Windows. You need to keep your web browser up to date. Pretty much all the software you're running, keep it up to date. The same is true even if you have a smartphone running Android or iOS or whatever. Just recently, just in the past month, there were a couple of really glaring security flaws in Apple stuff, like for example, WebKit. These were sort of like Windows level security holes, and they finally patched them. So even if you're using Apple devices, yes, you need to keep them up to date, because that provides all the patches and security fixes and will help to keep you safe. Because if you don't update everything, then you have all these glaring security flaws and holes in your software that become publicly known about, and all the hackers try to get in and screw you over, basically. So the first thing is to do software updates. The second is, of course, yes, you want to use antivirus software. Again, even if you're using, a Mac, even if you're using Linux, just because something is open source does not mean that it's super secure. For example, I can just hear all the Linux users saying like, oh, get rid of Windows 10, use Linux, it's super great. I've had recent experiences with Ubuntu Server specifically, where I was using Ubuntu Server 18.04 LTS, LTS standing for long-term support. And I was using Stunnel, which is an SSH tunnel. I wrote an article about it. You can check that out here. Basically, Stunnel had a very glaring security flaw in it that could lead to denial of service attacks. And instead of actually patching this vulnerability in the long-term support version of Ubuntu Server, the Ubuntu clan just decided that they wouldn't bother to fix it because they had more important things to do, which meant that I had to figure out how to patch the hole myself. Now, this is open source software that's supposed to be so much better. But just because something is open source doesn't mean that all the flaws are being fixed, because people are busy, and again, humans are flawed, so they make flawed software. So even if you're using Linux or Mac OS, Windows 10, whatever you're using, you should have antivirus software. Now, most people will be using Windows 10, and so therefore you already have the Windows security features built in. There's a firewall and there's Windows Defender Antivirus. From everything I've read, Windows Defender Antivirus is roughly 80% capable, which is to say that in various supposedly independent tests where they pitted Windows Defender Antivirus against all the other paid antivirus apps, basically Defender caught like 80% of the baddies. Now, that's actually pretty crap, because obviously if you have anti-malware or antivirus software, you want it to detect 100% of the baddies, not 80%. But it's better than nothing, and by default it comes with Windows 10, it's automatically enabled. You literally have to do nothing for it to work. So right there, you're probably fairly well off. There are various other antivirus packages out there. In terms of antivirus, honestly, I just stick with Defender. It's built in, it's free, 80% of the time it gets the bad guys. But on top of that, you probably want better zero-day protection. And for that, you need anti-malware software. And for that, I use Malwarebytes. You can go to malwarebytes.org, or is it malwarebytes.com now? I think it might be malwarebytes.com. I'll put a link in the description. Malwarebytes is an awesome package. Back in the day, they used to have an unlimited license, which I paid for, so I get free updates for the lifetime of my devices, actually the lifetime of the software, so I can transfer the license from one device to another. Nowadays, they're doing a different thing where in Europe, I think you get, for one device, you can pay like €3.33 a month for full protection, or you can pay €6.79 a month for up to 5 devices. That's actually pretty cheap considering per device. If you have like 5 computers, in your house, you're paying like, whatever, €1.20 or something per month per computer to be protected. That's really, really cheap. And the beauty of Malwarebytes is that it also protects against zero-day exploits. Now, as the name implies, a zero-day exploit is basically when the either good guys or bad guys reveal that there is some gaping security hole in some bit of software, and they have a brand new way to exploit this and take over your computer, encrypt everything, whatever, to do something evil. So Malwarebytes is very good at protecting against these zero-day exploits, these brand new hacks that just came out. And the other good thing about it is that, in contrast to other suites like Norton's Security Suite and Kaspersky Super Antivirus Mega Protection Suite and all that, Malwarebytes is like very small, it's very simple, and you install it and it's kind of like set it and forget it. It will pop up every now and then and say, hey, I did a scan, no threats detected. Or it will say, oh, please upgrade to the latest version. You click go. And other than that, it's never going to bother you. It's just going to protect you in the background unless it detects a baddie, which it will occasionally. And then you click yes, quarantine. And other than that, you don't even know it's there. And by you don't even know it's there, I also mean that it's not really bloated and slow. I've never actually used it on any computer where I found that it was kind of slowing the whole system down. When it does system scans and it scans all your files for viruses and malware, it's just really, really fast. And that is in contrast to, for example, Kaspersky. Kaspersky is one of the top rated for like decades. Top rated antivirus, anti-malware, protects you from everything. I used to use it and I really didn't like it because it made everything super slow. A lot of these suites, they pop up like every 5 seconds and say, you've installed a new piece of software. Is it okay for this to access the internet? And I spend more time clicking like pop-up protection dialog boxes than I do getting actual work done. And that's one of the reasons why I prefer Malwarebytes, because it doesn't harass you, it's fast, it's cheap, you're done. You won't even remember that it's there. And that brings us to the next thing. Many people will say, well, yeah, but what about a firewall? Firewalls are great if you know how to configure one. Again, if you're using Windows 10, there's a built-in Windows firewall. It's not the greatest, but if you've ever managed a server and you had a firewall on there, then you know that having a firewall and having, custom rules, it's either extremely complicated or it's like one of these protection suites where it's popping up every 30 seconds and it can become very annoying. I used to use Zone Alarm back in the day. That's like a blast from the past. And, it was very good, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, since I got rid of any, custom paid firewall, I haven't noticed any real difference in protection levels at all. For things like servers where, hackers are banging away on them constantly, yeah, you kind of need firewall protection. But for a home user, I've generally found that firewalls, especially if you're going to pay for it, they're not really going to do that much for you unless you're under heavy attack and you really know what you're doing and or are prepared to put up with annoying pop-ups every 5 seconds. Also, people say, well, you should use private browsing when you're surfing the internet. That's basically just a joke. I've talked about this before. I did a video on browser fingerprinting, and essentially private browsing mode, it's been actually more widely recognized in recent months that private browsing mode is basically a joke. It doesn't, sure, it prevents your cookies from that section from, mixing with your other cookie. It's supposed to be private, but it's really not. With things like browser fingerprinting, it doesn't matter if you're in private browsing mode or not. If you want to learn more about that, you can watch my video on browser fingerprinting, but sure, if you want to use private browsing, but don't expect it to actually do anything real to keep you private or secure. And next we come to various add-ons. For example, DuckDuckGo has this super security add-on. More and more browsers, like Firefox and Brave, are, they're blocking all this bad stuff, and they're warning you and protecting you against tracking cookies and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, those can be useful. They can also be extremely annoying and break a lot of things. So generally speaking, if the feature is there, like if I'm using Firefox or Brave and there are protections there, yes, I'm going to take advantage of them. But I find very often, for example, in Brave, I'm using a website and I'm going, geez, the Brave shields are up, and I basically just go and click and say, yeah, let everything through. Because I found that many times it actually kind of breaks the website. Like I'm trying to buy something and I get to some page and it's not working and I'm going, what's wrong here? And I went, oh geez, I forgot. So I turn the shields, I'll go back, and then the purchase goes through. And finally, we have the almighty VPN. Many people have asked me about VPNs. They asked me if I used VPN. I have used VPNs before. I've actually created sort of my own VPN by using an SSH tunnel to one of the servers I managed to make it appear that I was actually surfing the internet from Chicago. And essentially that's what a VPN does. Kind of the short version is that normally when you're browsing your internet service provider, your ISP, they can see everything that you're doing. And of course they may, sell that data to advertisers or whatever, spy on you, whatever. So the idea is that you use a VPN. Of course you have to pay for it, and you have a super duper encrypted connection to the VPN servers, and it's sort of like all your web browsing is relayed through that VPN. Now, in some cases, this is actually a good thing because many VPN packages offer additional protections. For example, they'll protect you against, phishing websites or other websites that have, Trojans, malware, whatever. There are extra protections that they give you because since you're sort of surfing through their servers are sort of doing some of this protecty stuff for you, so you don't need to install your own software. And that's kind of handy. But the question is it actually keeping you more safe in terms of privacy? And the answer to that is basically no. Because if you don't really trust your internet service provider with your private data, well then why are you trusting a company that because you're paying them money? Well, you're paying your ISP money. Are ISPs, more or less evil than the VPN service? Furthermore, if there's this idea that using a VPN anonymizes you, well, kind of. It sort of depends on who's actually looking. For example, if you're like the NSA, and the NSA wants to see what you're doing, well, it's not so hard. I mean, from a very basic level, they could look and see that your actual public IP address, your internet connection address, is connected to the VPN servers, and then they could look at the output of the VPN servers and see what websites they're going to, and they could kind of put two and two together just based on simple timing and go, all right, Bob just loaded, yourbank.com. I mean, within reason. The other thing to consider is if you're using a VPN and you are a person of interest, let's say, by using that VPN, you're trying to sort of obfuscate, you're trying to hide from the powers that be, let's say. So then the question is, well, why are you trying to hide from them? Is it just because you like your privacy, or is it because you're doing something nefarious? So I would think actually that VPNs are, for example, you could be looking at illegal material, right? And you'll use a VPN to look at that illegal material. If somebody goes into the VPN with a search warrant, what do you think that the VPN's just going to go, no, I'm sorry, we cannot reveal that information? Of course, they're just going to spill the beans because, you're doing something illegal, right? So, yeah, using a VPN is not some sort of amazing cure-all that's going to fix everything. In certain cases, it can be useful. Personally, I don't actually use one. I just surf and apply other simple solutions. Okay, so we need to keep our software up to date. We need some antivirus software, anti-malware software, good anti-malware software. Firewall, maybe, if you really want to. You can do, private browsing mode. You got, privacy add-ons, you got VPNs, and you got all these different tools to try and keep yourself safe, to try and improve your privacy, blah, blah, blah. But there's one thing and one thing only that really actually keeps you safe on the internet, and that's your brain. It is if you pay attention to what you're doing. Very often what happens is, like, say you'll get an email and it'll appear to come from yourbank.com, right? Okay, so there you are, you get this email and yourbank.com is writing to say that, like, oh, your account is $2,000 overdrawn and you need to click here and log in and blah, blah, blah. And you click the link and it takes you to a malicious website that appears to be your bank, but it's not. And you give them all sorts of personal information, even payment data, and oops, you've basically just been hacked and your credit card number has been stolen, and possibly other personal data has been now taken by the bad guys, and oops, you were fooled. There's a very simple thing you can do to prevent this sort of thing, and that is when you receive any kind of email or any other message and it says click this button or click this link, what you want to do is just take your little mouse cursor and hover over that button or link, and when you do that, usually at the bottom of the screen you will see a URL. And if the email purports to come from yourbank.com and you're hovering over the button or link and it says it goes to, like, UncleBob'sTacoEmporium.org, well, then obviously the email didn't come from yourbank.com, because yourbank.com wouldn't send you an email with a link to UncleBob'sTacoEmporium.org. So it's obviously a scam. That's kind of the number one thing you can do. And actually, I've said this to some people many, many times. It's like, oh my God, I got this email. I don't know if it's genuine. I'm like, well, did you hover over the button or the link to see where the links are going? Oh no, I forgot. Like, that's the kind of thing you need to do. You just need to be constantly aware and thinking about these things. You also need to be, if your bank actually sent you an email, they're not going to use all kinds of emotional language. Very often these scams are like, oh my God, your account will be shut down within 5 seconds because you're $2,000 overdrawn and, your head's going to explode. And the goal is to get you all worked up. They don't even know that yourbank.com is your bank. They just know that yourbank.com is a huge bank that maybe, they have a 40% chance. If they send an email to a whole bunch of people, there's a 40% chance that you will be one of those people that uses that bank and that you're going to click that link. So it's not even targeted very often. They're just kind of relying on getting you worked up and agitated so that you click that link without paying attention. But if you're paying attention, well, then you won't be taken in. And finally, you have to consider that who are you actually protecting yourself against? If you want to protect yourself against, the almighty NSA or the CIA, well, good luck with that, because, they've got some smart people there and they know all the exploits. I mean, people talk about cyber warfare and that sort of thing. I mean, Jesus, they have pretty much every country in the world has an entire, little army of hackers and programmers whose job it is to sort of hack into various systems and so on and so forth. So if you're trying to protect against someone who really, really knows what they're doing, you've already lost, because they're just good. If you're trying to protect yourself against so-called script kiddies, like minor hackers and stuff, your basic protections they're going to do the job. Antivirus, antimalware, you're safe. Be careful of the websites you visit. Don't click weird-looking links. Pay attention if you're surfing and you're on some website that looks like Facebook, but you notice that, the button is not quite what the Facebook button normally looks like on the real Facebook. That's your clue that this is actually a fake website, and oops, I shouldn't click the button and enter any personal information or put my password in or whatever. It's paying attention to those little details that's actually going to save you from doing something stupid. And yeah, that's kind of it. So in any case, I'll tell you a nice little story. You may even need to protect yourself in simpler ways. For example, if you're using Wi-Fi, many Wi-Fi routers come with no default password, for example. So if you get a Wi-Fi router and you put it in service, you should change the default password. You should make sure that you don't have a guest network that's wide open. Yes, out of the box it works, but no, out of the box it's not actually secure. So you should read the manual And when they tell you change the default admin password, do it. Because if you don't, very often you're kind of leaving yourself wide open, and you don't want to do that. Similarly, I once knew a guy who, in the neighborhood where he lived, this was over 20 years ago, they had cable modems, internet by cable service, and for some reason the cable company decided to put a router for the whole neighborhood in his house, which he agreed to, and he got some kind of discount or something off his internet service. And he came into work one day and he was just, thought it was great because he had taken a computer with Linux installed on it, and he had an Ethernet driver in promiscuous mode. Now, basically that means that you can connect that computer up to, say, this router, and instead of seeing the traffic, only the traffic that it's supposed to see, you can see all the traffic that's traveling over that router. So, he knew what he was doing. He was a techie, and he would sit there just for fun and see what websites his neighbors were visiting. Yeah, so, and he wasn't trying to steal any information or something. He was just nosy and apparently thought it was fun. So, yeah. So hopefully one or more of those tips helped. For more techie tips, see ScottiesTech.Info. Thanks for watching. See you next time.